Detective Rhea Larkin had seen hundreds of crime scenes in her 10 years on the force, but nothing prepared her for the night she stepped into the quiet, polished neighborhood of Amber Oaks, a place where lawns were trimmed perfectly, porch lights glowed warmly, and everyone claimed to know everyone. Yet behind the white fences and polite smiles, something monstrous had been hiding. The victim was Daniel Mercer, a respected high school history teacher adored by students and admired by neighbors for his soft voice and kind nature. He was the last person anyone expected to die violently, and the eerie stillness of his house only made the case more disturbing. Nothing was broken, no forced entry, no signs of a struggle, just Daniel lying motionless in his living room, and a single message carved into a notebook page beside him: "Some stories shouldn't be told." Rhea knew immediately this wasn't the work of a desperate thief or a random attacker. This was personal. His laptop was missing, his phone gone, and his bookshelves, filled with decades of journals, old yearbooks, and school records, were half empty, as if someone had carefully selected what they wanted and vanished into the night. But the most chilling detail came from the neighbors' doorbell cameras. When the footage was collected, all of them showed the same figure, someone wearing a hood, moving confidently through the neighborhood, never looking at any camera, always keeping their face hidden. It was clear, this person knew the camera angles, knew the blind spots, and knew Daniel's house better than any stranger would. As Rhea dug deeper into Daniel's past, she discovered a secret almost no one knew. 15 years earlier, Daniel had testified in a brutal case involving a troubled student, Mason Harlan, who had been expelled for violent behavior. Daniel's testimony had kept Mason out of juvenile prison by arguing the boy needed therapy, not punishment. But Mason disappeared shortly after and was never seen again. The case was buried, sealed, forgotten, but Daniel had kept a folder containing Mason's drawings and journal pages, each one growing darker, scribbled with disturbing phrases and violent imagery. It was clear that Daniel hadn't forgotten the boy at all. In fact, he had been researching him for years, tracking his movements, reading news from nearby towns where suspicious fires and disappearances occurred. It felt as if Daniel was trying to warn someone, or trying to stop something before it was too late. When Rhea followed a digital trail from an old police report to a recently abandoned apartment just outside town, she found an entire wall plastered with Daniel's photos, maps, and timeline notes. The chilling part wasn't the obsession, it was the handwriting on the wall, a perfect match to Daniel's own journals. But Daniel hadn't written them. The ink was fresh. Someone had been watching Daniel, studying him, tracking him. The more Rhea investigated, the clearer the pattern became. Everything pointed to someone who had been moving through towns for years, leaving behind chaos and broken families but never enough evidence to charge them. Daniel had gotten too close. He had finally uncovered the truth about Mason, that the troubled teenager had grown into a dangerous drifter who used different names, worked temporary jobs, and vanished before police could link anything to him. Daniel had spent years gathering proof, trying to help authorities build a case the right way. But Mason had discovered Daniel was following him, probably through online searches or a social media slip, and instead of fleeing, he came back to the one place he knew Daniel would never expect: his quiet, perfect neighborhood. Rhea finally got her break when she found a mechanic who recognized Mason from a photo she digitally reconstructed from the old school files. The mechanic said Mason had been asking strange questions, about security systems, about house blueprints, and about the easiest ways to bypass door sensors. He even asked about quiet tools that wouldn't wake the neighbors. That was enough for Rhea to move fast. Every hour put more distance between Mason and justice. While combing through abandoned highway security footage, she spotted a man with a similar build boarding a bus leaving the county. His hood was up, his head down, but his left hand was visible long enough to see a faint burn scar, the same scar documented in Mason's juvenile case. The bus was headed toward Redwood City, another town with unsolved fires and open missing persons reports. Rhea alerted local authorities, and within hours, the station was surrounded. But the man wasn't on the bus. Mason had slipped off at a stop cameras didn't cover. It was as if he had vanished again, like smoke slipping through fingers. Still, Rhea wasn't willing to accept defeat. Back in Amber Oaks, she sat alone in Daniel's quiet living room, staring at the message he left, the warning disguised as a final note. She read his journals late into the night, tracing his fears, his discoveries, and finally his certainty that Mason was escalating again. Daniel never wrote it clearly, but his last entry hinted he knew Mason was coming. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He stayed, hoping he could talk to the lost boy he once tried to save. But Mason wasn't a boy anymore. The case remains open, the town forever changed, and Detective Rhea Larkin continues to hunt the ghost of a man who has slipped through too many cracks. The quiet neighborhood that once slept peacefully now locks its doors early, checks its cameras twice, and leaves porch lights on through the night, because the truth is chilling: the most shocking murder wasn't random, wasn't accidental, and wasn't senseless. It was planned, calculated, personal, and the killer is still out there, somewhere, watching, waiting, invisible in plain sight.